Today I'm going to save you thousands by showing you how to paint a room all by yourself. Look at that. That's going to be sexy. Ew, I almost fell off my ladder. All you need is a handful of tools, 1 or 2 days, and oh yeah, no taping. This is for anybody updating their space or dealing with a landlord special like I am. You know what I'm talking about. They paint over the light switches and the plugs and do really sloppy work. So we've got nail pops and wall damage and paint all over the ceiling. So no matter how bad your situation, just follow my process and you're gonna get a clean, professional finish. Let's get started. And this is everything you're gonna need. Your favorite drill and a couple of bits. You'll need a knife. You'll need a 5-in-1. Great for opening cans of paint. You'll need a 4-inch knife, preferably brand new. I'm gonna recommend this ergonomic handy pail. And then my favorite paintbrush, 3.5-inch angled sash. Grab yourself some canvas drop cloths. 4-inch mini roller and a tray with a liner, and you're going to want a caulking gun. And for priming all of your drywall repair, I recommend Kill's oil-based stain blocker. You're going to want to get your Radius 360 sanding block and a Wooster pole. And for painting your walls, grab the Sherlock stick with the easy to connect Wooster cage and just a simple 1/2-inch nap roller. Let's get to work. And what I like to start with is a thing that takes the longest to dry. And that, of course, is wall damage and nail pops. Here's an example of a nail pop that has a heartbeat. See that flex? That's a screw that went past the paper. And the way we fix it, 1 inch below. We're gonna use Drydex. And the secret to this product, 2 things. For a painter, it's great because it goes white when it's dry, but it does shrink a little bit while it's drying. So you don't wanna put it on too tight because after that dries, you'll have 1, 2, 3 dents in the wall. So put it on liberally like that. When we sand it back, we can sand it smooth. So we can do all of the patching and then we can get all the rest of the prep work done while this is drying. And that helps save us a lot of time. These yellow things, they're a drywall plug. If you take your 5-in-1, hit the edge, just shear it right off. And you can take the other end of your tool and just create a bit of a bowl and push that into the wall. Now you're not making contact, but the hole is filled with the plug and it greatly reduces the amount of drying time and almost eliminates the shrinkage in the hole. Anything that can be removed should be removed. I have seen lots of people in my career remove the doors and leave the track. And what ends up happening is you get all this wall damage that never gets painted properly, or you get somebody getting paint all over your track. I'm gonna fix the ugly. Now, let's go take care of the cold air return grill. Because it's been painted in a few times, what I'm trying to do is just cut the paint that's bonded together with the metal. There we go. So instead of trying to clean this up, I'm just gonna buy a replacement. That was the original paint color. I'm not going through all the trouble of all of this work just at the very end to go put a finished grill back on and have a little line showing. Now that I've got all my wall patches drying, I can prime and prep all of my ceiling areas. This is a primer sealer. It helps to cover up all these ugly mistakes really conveniently in just 1 coat. If somebody's got a really dark color paint, you might need to do 2 passes around the room. So we're gonna take our quart of ceiling paint and we're gonna put some of it in the handy pail with a liner because we're gonna be brushing some and rolling some. We're pushing the brush into the paint. It's about 1 inch thick and we're painting from inside the brush. There's not a bunch of slop on the outside, okay? That is the technique, which is why you don't need tape. Now, on the ceiling, I actually spray the ceiling and then scrape this and then give it a light sand and paint it. And there's actually a line here where it separates one to the next. And all I'm gonna do is run that brush right across that line. Now, this is incredibly forgiving, okay? So if you have very little experience, doing the edge up against the stipple is a great way to start. And you'll notice it's a firm brush. I don't have to get a whole lot of this going on, okay? Just gotta stand it and put a bit of a bend. Gives you a lot of control. Less is more here. We're just trying to make sure we don't have 2 colors of paint on the smooth edge so that it's obvious. We're gonna prep the roller here. It's microfiber. The last thing we want here is have so much paint in the roller that when we go to touch the ceiling, there's a big blob of paint there. So you really use a little bit of pressure, make sure the paint's inside the roller, and then that is absolutely perfect. No dripping. And then all we're gonna do is nice and gentle like, so we don't get drips. Okay, you're gonna need to do a little bit of practice, know how much pressure to use. Get right into that corner, and that's it. Now that's painted. And now we have a perfect ceiling line to paint up against. Now between the kills and the roller, this is going to be great coverage, and that other color is going to be gone forever. So 4-inch mini roller. Anytime you've got a smooth edge ceiling, works perfectly. I know not everybody has the same stuff everywhere. If you have just flat, or if you have like a knockdown texture or an orange peel or full stipple, the only other solution that you have is to paint the entire ceiling. But because this is smooth edge, we get to completely cheat. I don't want to add any more paint to the ceiling. I don't want to have to paint the entire ceiling just to clean up a little bit of an edge. So because in this situation, I get to do this, I save a ton of time. Now you might be able to get away with not using the brush at all to cut that line, but what a great opportunity to practice and work on your brush a little bit. One of the reasons I tell people they don't need tape, because the paint will peel off of the wall or the ceiling if it hasn't finished the curing process, which takes about a month. Now it's time to teach you how to use a paintbrush like a pro. We're not working out of the can, we're working from our little container here. We're looking for just about an inch and a half of paint. When you have a new brush, you have to learn how it reacts. There's a lot of different kinds of bristles, different strengths. So we're gonna fill it up and then we're gonna clean it off. We're gonna start with it almost empty, and that's the best way to practice. And the way we do it, it's like when you're learning how to paint with a painting crew for the first time. They shove you in the closet, and if they have to, they can do touch-up work. And if you're sloppy and you put on too much paint, it's okay, because there's no direct light in a closet in almost every situation. So it's the safest place to learn how to do this. You can practice your skill set so that you've got the ability to do really nice lines around your ceiling later in the afternoon. This is an angled sash. This is the heel. That's the tip. I'm right-handed, so I'll start on the right-hand side, but I'm going to paint the left side. And I'm going to pretend that's the ceiling and that's the wall. So you put the heel and then you push the tip into the corner, and then you're going to pull, setting that brush right in that crease. And if you find yourself with too much paint, stop and pull off and come again. All right, and practice doing a cut line. If that was a ceiling and that's a wall, that's actually a pretty nice job. Yay for me, I still remember how to paint. It's been a while. And we want to have a good 3 to 4 inch line. Now you're not relying on your own ability to draw that line with the brush. What you're really doing is taking a brush that doesn't have paint on the outside, setting that bristle into that corner, and then just letting the bristle sit in that corner, and you move forward with pressure. That's all it is. We're going to practice different corners, different cut lines. Always brush through your corners. All right, you want to keep things nice and dry. It's okay to see the wall behind coming through. That's why we use 2 coats. Now, left side, heel and then tip. That works really good when there's not a lot of paint in the brush. If there's too much paint, you're going to get it slopping around everywhere. There we go, get it in that crease and then just run it. You get the paint out first. This is another technique. You can come back a little drier, and then you're just pushing the extra paint up into that crease. That's another great way to get it done. So when you push the tip, you lift the heel, and it gives you more of a triangle, more of a sharp tip. Upside down, heel, triangle in the corner. We're in a closet, so we're going to treat the baseboard like it's a ceiling line now. When you're painting with a dark color, it's a lot easier to come back and do that one coat of baseboard at the very end if you haven't painted all over your trim. This isn't speed, so I'm going to be a little bit more careful here. If anything doesn't have enough paint, or it needs a little bit of rework or doctoring up, save it for the second coat. As a matter of fact, when you're painting your ceiling line for the first time, especially with a dark color, I recommend that you leave a little bit of a gap on purpose. I'm going to go about an 1/8 to a 1/16 below that line on purpose. And then on the second coat, I would come back, push right into that corner, and then finish drawing that line right in that crease. That's a great technique, especially if you're new to this. Give yourself a little mercy at 8 feet in the air. All right, you aren't going to be able to tell if that 1/16 or 32nd of an inch is 1 coat or 2 coats. Just saying. Because we're dealing with acrylic paint, you can see the paint is starting to work its way all the way up the bristles. Every time I put a pressure on that brush and I push, the paint goes in 2 directions, up into the bristles and then out to the wall. Okay, so you've only got about an hour while you're working before you have to stop and go wash your brush and start over again. So we're going to finish off this closet and then go take care of the brush. Once that acrylic hardens up, ladies, it's like having your nails done. Now, we have texture that hasn't been cleaned right, and this is how we do it. We're not just drawing a line, because that's what happens. You get a really nasty look, okay? So, instead of drawing a line, I want you to do something like this. You're gonna pull and push, like this, into that ceiling. That's a little bit more dramatic than I want you to do, but you get the idea. So it's just a constant jiggle wiggle. And what happens is you'll paint the back side of every one of those bumps, as well as the front side. And over the course of that whole ceiling line, it'll look a lot more consistent. Now it looks like the texture's coming into the wall instead of the other way around. As a homeowner, you will pay somewhere between $500 and $1,000 for a good quality paint job in a big room in your house, if it's involving repairs and ceilings and things like that. Now the paint only costs you about 150 bucks. The rest of that is labor. Or you can just buy the paint and save almost $1,000 a room. I'll let you decide. But that's pretty darn simple, isn't it? First of all, we're gonna wash everything going away from your bone, okay? Hot, but not too hot. And not cold. Cold water makes your acrylic clump up right away. And we're just gonna work the surface with your thumb, try to get as much of that paint out as you can. Pull the bristles apart, get some water into the middle. So it's already looking pretty clean, but like that's really dirty water coming out, okay? What we're gonna do now is we're gonna just take some regular dish soap and we're just gonna suds it up and foam it up and try to keep all that soap stuck inside the bristles. And then we're gonna do the same thing with the soap. We're gonna just massage this all out, always running the water away from the bone so that we don't push any of this up into it. Now we're gonna use force and we're gonna go the exact opposite direction. Like as if we're loading the brush with paint. Turn up the water just a bit and we're going to pound it in there, all right? We want to force that water right up to the top, right inside that bone, now that we've cleaned it out the best we can. And we're forcing whatever's left stuck inside there out. When you push it on the side really tight, there should be no dirt coming into that water. Look at that. That's drinkable, ladies and gentlemen. Now we're just going to squeeze it, wring it out. Then we're going to just put it between our hands and we're going to spin cycle. Like a dog coming in out of the rain. We have a perfectly brand new brush again. It's ready to paint. You don't have to let it dry or anything either. That is good to go right there. Now that you know how to use a brush, let's go through the steps on how to paint your room in proper order so that you can be absolutely efficient and get the rest of this work done in just a few hours. Step one, caulking. If you have any gaps where your trim meets the wall or where a wall meets a wall, remember we're in a 4-season climate, we get massive expansion and contraction in the corners. And the solution is to use a 60-year caulking, not the cheap painter's caulking. Okay, because it cracks. There's no sense just putting a little bead. We're not looking for a sharp corner here because it'll happen again next year. So what I'm doing is I'm putting enough of this product on here that it should protect that crack from realizing itself again next year. One other thing to consider when you're doing caulking, take a look at your baseboards. A lot of builders will do this. They'll come along and they'll do sloppy carpentry. And they're relying on the complexity of this profile to make it really easy to cover their mistakes by not having a nice tight fit. Now this caulking is not a quick dry. It takes about an hour, which is why we want to get it done now. So everything else that we do for the next few steps allows this to dry fully before the roller finds that wall. I'm going to use the 3M sanding sponge now. It's an angled sponge, so it's great for details in the corner, and they've included this cute little design on the back for dust control. So the idea is as you sand, the dust isn't being thrown up in your face. It can actually fall to the ground. You should not feel any change in depth. If you do, it's a bump. It'll show up with the dark paint. This is not like sanding fresh drywall mud. What we're doing when we're sanding drywall mud is we've applied thin layers of mud, and we're just feathering the mud into the paper. This is all about, can you feel any ridges? Adding an acrylic paint is going to multiply it visually by about 20 times. Once we've got all our patches sanded, we're pulling out our kills. Keep a distance or it'll blob up on you. This product takes about 10 or 15 minutes to dry. There's enough process left that it'll guaranteed be dry by the time you get over with the roller. Next step, we're going to hit all of the casings. I'm talking about this abomination. That's just ridiculous. Make sure that it's clean. This is my trim paint. Looks pretty white, but doesn't look as white as the original trim. I'm gonna put the heel of the brush on the wall and paint the wall and the trim at the same time. This will help us when we come back to get a really nice line. My goal here is to try to paint the side of this trim and not have to paint the face. I'm gonna do the same thing, hit all the windows. Let's say somebody did a decent job painting the edge. You hitting it again is always a good thing. This edge isn't all that terrible. So that's really clean. Now watch. I'm gonna pretend I'm painting the next color. I'll try to do a perfect cut in for the window, and then we'll see if any green is still showing. All right. Now, every one of those little green spots is gonna show up when you're done your paint job. So, better to have a preemptive strike, come back with the brush, paint it all in, and then not have to worry about it. Now you know you got a clean edge. We have the same thing with the trim here and the trim here. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna overfill this whole area to make sure that all that cutting work is gonna have a fresh start. The last step of preparation is the sanding. And we're using a 220 sand grit. Two things we're doing here. We are sanding off any dirt that got trapped in the last paint job, and we're collecting all of the cobwebs that have collected on your wall. Now this is not something that you need to do with a huge amount of precision, and we're just looking to cover one pass over the whole surface so that our finished look is dynamic. Now we're coming into the corner where we have fresh caulking. It's still dense, which means it's dry on the surface, but we can't afford any impact with the sanding block. So we're gonna leave a couple of inches there. Now we've made it all the way back to the closet. Here we are, guys, day 2. That means this paint was shaken yesterday. We need to give it a quick stir, top to bottom. All right. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna finish off in the closet all the details that we didn't get to yesterday. Did the patch with the kills, and this triangle board here is actually MDF, and it was painted as well. At this point, you've practiced enough that you should be a little comfortable with the brush. You also want to have the brush seasoned with paint, but not too much paint. You should see lots of bristle. So we're going to hit around the plugs. Never rely on your roller to do this. Cutting in is giving you room to roll up to something that's already painted. So you can avoid getting too close and getting your paint on your actual plugs and switches. Once you're comfortable, the proper way to paint is to run right down both. Just do a few feet and then just brush it out about 1.5 to 2 inches. If we get paint on the trim, then we're definitely going to have to do 2 coats. Whoops. Now we'll have an example later on in the video of how much work it takes to actually get that covered. It's time to tackle the ceiling. So let's get that done. I don't want you to be nervous at this point. Remember, heel to tip. We're going to come short of that ceiling on purpose. Get the paint out of the brush, and now we can come back, paint down a little bit, and that should be about 4 inches, okay? Now when your roller comes up, your roller is going to roll into this about this close and then roll away. That way your roller is never getting anywhere near the ceiling. You do not want to ever make contact with the ceiling because that puts you back to step 1. All right, so if you're feeling brave and you want to tackle this, let's do this together. Heel on the wall, below the ceiling, and work your way up to it as you're pulling along. As soon as your bristle hits that corner, just run your brush along, sitting in that corner, in that edge. That's all there is to it. I mean, after you get good at this, you'll never use tape again. If I was to try and tape the ceiling right now, you're taping over fresh paint and primer, and it's gonna peel. And then you're gonna be back to repairing the ceiling, spackling, letting it dry, sanding it off, priming it, painting it again, right? You can't afford that. It's just no. That's just a no scenario. This is a great line. You're gonna be really happy with that. We're standing up here 6 inches away and the camera's saying, hey, Jeff still knows how to paint, and you can too. We're gonna cut the entire room before we pull out the roller, because depending on the speed that you paint, if you have the cut dish and the rolling tray at the same time filled with paint, it starts to dry immediately after you pour it out. The entire room cut and roll probably will take about 2 hours, guys, okay? Just to factor that in if you're working by yourself. And if you are working with a helper, you can cut that time in half. My paint line is just about at the brass. It's a perfect time to wash. This is my 5th time washing this brush on this project. The reason I need this to be clean is because of this. I have a cut line here and a cut line here, and you need your brush to be the same size as the place you're cutting. This brush is huge relative to this situation, and there's no way for me to maintain control and cut both lines at the same time, unless I do this. Make my 3-inch brush a 1-inch brush. Hold it like a gun. We'll load it, and I can cut one side, and I can cut the other side. You don't need to go out and buy an artist brush set to use this technique. Remember, this isn't about speed, it's about precision. And if I take 10 minutes on this little area and make it absolutely perfect, then that's okay with me. Would this go faster with a smaller brush? Yeah. Do you always have that brush on you? We're at that point in the project we're gonna roll. Our tray has liners, and it has this tray arm. It's not available everywhere, so I'll throw a link in the video description, and if you can get it, you can get it. If you can't, we'll have to see what we can do about that another time. This is my Sherlock Wooster stick, and I'm using the Wooster handle. The handle has the threading inside for the standard thread size for any extension pole, but it also has this pin lock on it, and the pin lock works like this. So it can't come off and it can't twist. Traditional extension poles are just threaded. As you're rolling, you change your direction, this starts to unravel. And then as you're rolling, it's all over the wall like this, okay? You're out of control. And you're banging into things, it's a complete mess. With this system, everything is locked. I can run my roller within 1/8 of an inch up and down that wall. Perfect control, never scratching the paint on the surface next to it. It also allows you to extend and collapse depending on the space you're working in, okay? And allows you to keep your hands below your heart while you're painting. Okay, this is exhausting, and you'll put way too much paint on the wall. You get yourself back off the wall, keep your hands low, and you can paint with ease from top to bottom. I'm going to pour the contents over the edge, but not right to the roller. I don't want to put all of the paint in there because I don't want to let that sit there and skim over. I'm going to leave my brush in the paint. Now it is time to roll the wall. And the way we do that, we roll into the paint, we lift it up. We do not sink it to the bottom. We don't want to fill all this up with paint, okay? Nice and easy. Just make contact, lift it back. Roll this in 15 or 20 times. Push the paint right to the middle of the roller. This is what we call priming the roller. I'm using a 13 mil roller sleeve. It's only 1/2 inch, and it's for smooth to semi-smooth surfaces. So make sure you buy the right roller for the right kind of surface. Smooth is for doors, semi-smooth is for walls. All right? When you roll, you always pick one direction. Rollers leave texture on the wall. No different than getting a grass cut at a professional golf course or vacuuming a high pile carpet. As you roll, the bristles are pulling off the paint. And when you go the other direction, they're pulling off paint in a different direction. Okay, and so you get a different reflection. And you'll actually mess up the look on your wall if you go in more than one direction. And we're really trying to dry the surface of that roller out. Get right into the corner. But we're not trying to push it so hard that we're like squeezing the paint out, okay? You can see we're just kind of painting and letting gravity do its thing. We're going back to the beginning at our driest point, picking up the extra paint that was put on from the very beginning, okay? That's it, nice and simple. Now that it's seasoned, we'll call it, it moves a lot faster. Don't start you're the fresh roller in the top corner, okay? Start in the middle of the wall, roll it down, roll back up to the starting position. There's a texture here. Looks like a fast running river. There's a lot of paint on that wall. And we're gonna pick that up in a minute, but we're gonna back into the old line. We're gonna come forward now. We've dried off a little bit. Now we're picking up a little bit more. We're gonna spread that out. We're gonna come back through that and pick it up again. See how this works? We lay it down thick. We dry out the roller. We come back through the heavy paint. We pick up more paint. And to get into that corner, we simply spin it around and get that roller within that 1/4 inch line. That's a nice healthy line, 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch. Now, when I get up here, because it's a different surface, I could cheat. I could go left or right, but I don't need to. I just go like this, get all that extra paint off, and then I'm just gonna go back through. And as I'm leaving rolling paint off, I'm picking it up from that wet line at about the same rate. Makes this very consistent. And you can get to a place where you can feel the pulling away. It's almost like a texture, like a magnet. And you can tell when your roller is wet and when it's dry. Always have this rod facing the direction that you're painting so that you're pushing the paint here and you're picking it up here. Gets rid of all the lines on the wall. The same reason we're starting in the closet for the roll as with the brush. This is a great place to practice, to get used to the paint that you've bought, how it reacts with the roller, how it reacts with the wall surface, so that when you get out into the main part of the room, you've got a feel for the relationship between the paint, the roller, your pressure, all these things. Our goal now is to finish off the rest of this room. Okay guys, it's second coat time, and we are going to go open a brand new can of paint today. We do not want to run the risk of starting some of the work with the brush with the old paint that had that separation issue. So this one's freshly shook. We're gonna go ahead now and do that 4-inch mini roller work. We got 2 spots to do little touch-ups. This is a little bit sloppier. So when you get over to the area where you want to roll, you're gonna be sliding paint onto the wall. So you just want to get it applied. And if it's too greasy and it's just sliding around instead of rolling, ease off on the pressure, and that should generally work. If it doesn't, because it's not seasoned, just roll more of the wall out and get that roller a little drier, okay? Mini rollers can be a little bit frustrating if you have too much paint on them. We're doing this first coat just before we get started on the rest of this area with the second coat, knowing that this is gonna dry in about 25 to 30 minutes. So it's not gonna slow me down at all. And in that way, my mini roller has the same paint for the second coat as the rest of the room to avoid any flashing or glossy areas. When you're painting your finish coat, there's a rule to get what we call the wet edge. Let me just show you. We have a difference in glare here, and that's because brushing and rolling leaves different amounts of paint on the wall. Brushing generally leaves more. But what we want to make sure is that we don't have brush lines and then roller lines that dry as such. We want the texture to be the same. So what we want to do is we want to sand it all just to make sure we don't have any dirt or grit on the wall. But we want to then paint the entire surface, cut and roll before the cut work dries on the second coat. Now this is relatively fresh paint, so you're going to see it leaves a bit of a scuff, and that's normal. Don't be worked up over that. It's okay to use a little bit of pressure, and you'll see that little white dot there. That was a chunk of dirt that was stuck in the paint. I'm going to prep a few surfaces, and then I'm going to leave my sanding pole right there. And that's going to mark what's done and what isn't. Now my goal here is to cut and roll each surface one at a time so that the brush marks don't dry before the roller marks hit it. Because if the brush mark is dry and the roller comes up to it, then this stays looking like a brush. But if it's wet and I roll into it, then they melt together, okay? I'm also starting with a brand new roller today. I don't want yesterday's paint mixing in with today's paint. I know that might sound a little paranoid, but you got to buy the 2 gallons anyway, so any little anomaly can really affect something when you have acrylic in your paint, even with low sheen. This is an old brush, and I use this to clean my baseboards. We don't want to pick up the dust and then set it right back down into the wall again. This is second coat. We still don't need everything perfect in the inside corners. We have artist brushes. We can come back and do little touch-ups later on. It's not going to affect the overall quality of the finish. If you cut short of the ceiling, this is your chance to fix any of those mistakes. The second coat, we're not doing both sides of the corner. We're just focusing on one corner. And because I've got 15 minutes, I'm comfortable doing this wall as well. If you're happy with the cut line, don't try to duplicate it. In the same way, if you go short on the first one, you want to finish the cut on the second. If your first cut is nice, come up to 1/16 of an inch of that line. You don't need a second coat of paint right at the cut line. You season this roller. And again, we're going to go use the power of this rig because it doesn't twist. Get right nice and close to that corner. And we're going to roll that brush line into texture of the roller. And second coat, we're going to get closer to the top and closer to the bottom. Just don't touch that ceiling. Take your time. Now, one other thing we're going to do that we haven't shown you yet is we're going to texture the wall by finishing rolling down on the whole surface. So instead of back rolling, which is just the process of rolling back and forth on the wall, we're going to directional roll, okay? And this will eliminate that just vacuum the carpet look, okay? Usually the second coat uses about 80% as much paint as the first coat. We're just trying to make sure we're getting enough color and content and solids on the wall to finish the job. Now, if you're not as concerned about getting rid of those lines from the brush, you don't need to get up near the ceiling, okay? But if you're like me, you're gonna have a little OCD about these things. You're gonna come back and look at it afterwards and go, oh, I really wish I just would have textured properly. I would have rolled up into my brush lines, because you can tell. Especially with dark colors, guys. Now I've got a couple of surfaces in. I would expect you to be in the same boat as I am right now. You're like, oh, I know how long I got. I got 15 minutes before the paint is dry. I can get 1 or 2 of these small walls at a time, no problem. So now you can just start thinking about picking up your speed a little bit. This corner, we came shy of the ceiling the first coat, and this one we went all the way up. But now we don't have that drag because we have an acrylic paint here. So now I can start my brush out, push it up into that corner, and I'm really only focused on that 1/8 of an inch. And I can draw a line with relative ease here. We are dealing with a rather significant wall here. And this paint, not this particular paint, but today's paint, dries super fast. If I try to cut the rest of this wall before I start rolling, this paint is all gonna dry. So what we wanna think now is wet edge. If you have a helper, 1 cut, 1 roll, that works the best. But if you're by yourself, you can do 4 feet of wall section at a time. You can cut 4 feet, top and bottom, and then roll out a 3-foot section. We're gonna start the clock because this now becomes my wet edge, okay? The time it took me to extend my cut lines, this is still a wet edge, all right? And this is where the beauty of the system is. Working alone, anywhere your brush or roller is gonna make contact with something that's previously painted, it has to be wet. Beautiful. So let's talk about what to do when this happens. New with a brush, you're gonna have mistakes. It's normal, and it's not a big deal. It's not the end of the world. And here's a $3 solution. This is a silly little scraper I found in the paint department. It's actually designed for applying wallpaper. And this is what we're gonna call our spray shield. You guessed it, we need more kills. Whenever you're solving a problem in this environment, you really want to consider time. And again, by the time I'm done painting all the baseboard in this room, this will be dry and ready for a coat of paint. So, here we go. What we're going to do is we're going to shoot a little closer. And that's it. All right? All right, we're going to open up our trim paint now. I'm only painting the top part of the baseboard, not the whole thing. Show you how to do this here. Because this baseboard has got a lot of little detail. So I've got detail lines and I got a detail line here. When I'm painting, if I can get away with just painting this top detail, even if the white isn't a perfect match, no one can tell. So we're gonna set our brush here. We're not gonna push, we're just gonna drag. If you push, you're gonna put too much pressure on the bristles and it's gonna force the paint out the side and the top, make a mess. It's that simple. This is all about don't use pressure. Let the brush do the work. Now that's what it looks like finished. This is a great time. If you see anything on your door casing that's a bit of an anomaly you don't like, same rule. Just get the brush in there. You can redraw a line if you need to. No tape required. Truth is, the brush can do a better job of making a straight line than you can putting tape on straight. We're coming up to where we did the kills. We'll just make sure she's dry. We're in good shape here, guys. Remember, less is more. If you're trying to put it on really thick so that you can cover colors, it's a mistake. It'll take an hour and a half or 2 hours to dry. You're better to go 2 or 3 coats that only take 10 or 15 minutes to dry. Remember, a big bubble of paint will dry from the outside in. And if you run that brush through it, you're gonna bust the bubble and expose all that fresh paint underneath. There we go. Now, yeah, I definitely got some overspray. And that's fine. I'm gonna wash this brush when I'm done, come back and cut that color in. There's my overspray. One little spot. And there's nothing really to set the brush on, so this one you actually got to hold and draw. You want to just paint really with like 1/3 of the brush, just the tip. Remember, if you want a perfect paint job, then you got to build the house yourself. Because the perfect finish comes with great construction, really nice drywall work, great carpentry skills, and every step of the production leans into whether or not the paint job is going to be any good. So you make sure that you give yourself a little bit of mercy. And when you're done going around the room, feel free to be critical now that you've had the experience. All right, guys, there you have it. No tape, no mess, and no landlord special. With the right product and the right technique, you can paint your bedroom in a weekend.